Yo, 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 what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stacks in this thing, baby. And today, I'm actually going to be updating my counter fairies. Now I've been basically tweaking with other cards and trying out new stuff. And another card that I was recently, really, enjoying actually was the Parthian Shot. This card was just, it's nuts. I'm like, strongly considering just building a totally unique side deck just for this deck exclusively. Because I found that this card alone was so powerful in this deck. Like with this card, especially because it's searchable and you benefit off of it. Anytime your opponent tries to evenly match you, they basically waste their whole turn trying to evenly you, and you just flip this at the end of the battle phase. It becomes the end of the turn, and you can negate the evenly match if they want to still evenly you, which is just it's nuts. It's like I really think this is crazy, but I've been trying a lot of different stuff with this deck and tweaking my extra deck based on all the experiences, and I kind of like to duel this deck against my other decks, like my best decks, to see how good it is. And I'm not gonna lie, it did whoop on my Heralds, but it's just because Herald can't keep up with counter traps. And to be fair, I didn't side deck, so I didn't have reboots or anything. Just the fact that it was able to whoop my Heralds alone kind of just impressed me a lot and had me like, boy, this deck is pretty fire, man. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty fire. So we're gonna hop into the list. My card choices are my own. Your card choices may be different, but you know what? That's the beauty of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's diverse. Everybody has different mindsets. So if you don't agree with my list, or you find something that you think is unique or that you don't like, I totally understand, but just understand that I build my decks based on basically a biased decision of me, myself, and I, and the way I love it. So let's go ahead and hop into it, you guys. We're going to start off with 2 copies of Sacred Arknight Parshav. Now, this card is a really good one-of because it can come back from the grave, but I'm playing Desires in my list, and this card is actually like one of your win conditions. This card allows you to out-resource your opponent, and you can grind for a very, very long time with this card. So it's so broken, you guys. Seriously, this is one of the best plays of the deck. If you can't win with this, it's really hard to not win. If you can't win with this, it's just really hard to win after that. This is your best play, and you have to back him up with a lot of negates to protect him and keep fin all the other effects off of him. And you're trying to just sit on him and just put as much pressure as you can and generate as much field presence and that card advantage, economy, and try to get as much damage as you possibly can in. And next up, we're gonna play 3 copies of Guiding Ariadne. Guiding Ariadne is just nuts in this deck. Free strikes, free ultimate providences. I wouldn't be mad at that any day. That's just really good. Free warnings, and then the fact that it can be popped and you could just search your counter traps, which is nuts. Because if you really were up to it, you could just normal this guy and crash him into something just to get the counter trap that you need. For example, if you need the counter trap that gives you access to him, you'll just reveal 3 of it and then just grab one of the 3, and then you have access to him because he's the win condition. He's the nuts. Yeah, this card is so good in this deck. He is extremely good. Now, next up, we're playing 3 copies of Bountiful Artemis. Bountiful Artemis is another way that you can out-resource even a Sky Striker deck. And the beauty is you can't really get Widow Anchored because you play 12 cards that can negate the Widow Anchor. So you don't have to worry about this card losing his effect in that matchup. But outside of that, you pretty much out-resource any other deck. Sky Strikers are the only deck that could potentially keep up in terms of sheer card economy, but nah, not when Bountiful Artifacts gets you that far. It's nuts. And next up, something that I really like a lot. I like 2 Meltios, the Sage of the Sky. Meltio is so overpowered in my opinion. He's bonkers, you guys. This card is so broke. It's just it. Each time you resolve a counter trap, you gain 1,000 life points. So you're winning already because your life points don't cost life. Your counter traps don't cost life points because of Ariadne. So you're just playing a strike and gaining 1,000. And then if you have Sanctuary on the Sky, you're popping a card your opponent controls and it doesn't even target, and it's not once per turn. It's each time. So when you have Ties of the Brethren, I'll summon out Bountiful Artemis in this. But based on whatever I already had opening in my hand, if I open with him, Then I'll go Ties of the Brethren, summon out Meltiel, and then the Barrier Statue. And like, you have so much control with that alone because you're withering your opponent down, you're negating their cards, and then you're drawing, then you're getting 1,000, and then you're popping a card on their field. And then another card that I'm starting to check out now is Minerva. I like her. She comes up really really clutch in the grind game and the mid to late game, like when you need your resources back. And she's a beater that continues to increase and increase and increase, which really helps because there are times like if you sit on her long enough where she'll get bigger than Parshath, and that's important because in other scenarios, Parshath is like the biggest monster that you have. Like, it's really hard for this deck to commit to like link fours and stuff like that. So it's not like you can go into like, you know, like a bomber or a Gumblar or something like that, like to beat over things. Like, it's hard enough to go for Decode Talker as it is because you don't have ways to recur your monsters. So a lot of the times it's better than not go to your extra deck at all. But with that in mind, like, it's really important to have main deck beaters like this card, and being able to add your counter traps back and just really maintain your resources is incredible. So like if you're playing a deck that Barrier Statue doesn't beat, then you literally just sit on these three and you flip your counter traps. You go, I draw, I gain 1,000, I pop that card, and then, oh yeah, she gains 500, then I add a different name counter trap from my grave to my hand. So you're going like +3. Every time you activate a counter trap, you're going +3. Like, you're going to get so far ahead that your opponent is going to scoop on you. And then we still play one copy of Honest and one Barrier Statue because it is correct to play Honest to protect your Barrier Statue from being attacked over. Like, all you really need to do is protect them from one turn, because after that you're going to be resolving the trap that summons out Parshath, and Parshath is going to get you the W. So yeah, I really wouldn't change the monster count this time. My mistake last time was only playing one Sage and then not playing Minerva, but now I'm playing Minerva and I bumped the Sage up to 2 because the Sage is disgusting. Like, you guys, Sage is so broken. Like, low-key, I like him more than Artemis a lot of times because, like, Artemis draws, but it's like you're trying to draw the cards to deal with the problem, but Sage deals with the threat head on. Like, he deals with it right then and there and giving you your life points so that when it comes down to intermatch procedures, you're going to be more far ahead of your opponent than in more ways than one. He's the nuts. Like, Sage is, like, in my opinion, like, the best. Next up for our spells, we play 3 ties. Now, in this build, I want to go either, like, an opening with ties so I can set up those crazy combos, but you don't always draw ties. You know, it's not all 40 cards in your deck. So when you're not drawing ties, you want to open with another powerful play like Card of Demise. Like, this deck is all about power plays. Like, your monsters can't get you really anywhere unless you have multiple counter traps. And in order to have multiple counter traps, you need to resolve cards like Card of Demise so that they can get you there. So, like, if you don't open ties, Demise is, like, your next best play. But also, in tandem with that, I'm playing 3 copies of Cards from the Sky. This card actually complements Demise really well because if you resolve Demise and you draw another fairy that you don't need, you can filter your hand with cards and then sack that off and then draw 2 fresh cards, so that way you can set more back rows and have less monsters so you're not discarding too much. And it just really helps you. Like, sometimes you'll open with the normal and then have another monster in your hand and you want to resolve Demise for 3. So you're just Cards from the Sky that and draw 2, and then you can Demise, and like you just set the 2 that you draw and then you can Demise, and you just open the nuts. It's really, really good. And then I also play 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Pot, you only really need to just like see it one time occasionally. And sometimes you plus so hard that like you can't afford, like, there was a time like just practicing, like, you know, because I duel this deck against my decks where I was plussing so hard off of the Minerva and off of the Bountiful Artemis that if I would have potted, I wouldn't have been able to set all my cards and I would have had to discard during the end phase. Like, it was just so nuts. Like, oh my gosh. But this is still correct to play. Like, it really is. And I like that all the cards draw. So the cards that get me somewhere, the cards that set me up in all my power plays, they can't be stopped by Colossus because they're all draw cards. Next up, 2 copies of the Sanctum of Parshath. This card is incredible, you guys. It's so incredible. So powerful. Like, oh my goodness. I was so close to playing 3 of it, but I have enough draw power to see it enough. and it's searchable too if you really need it. But this card, I'm trying to see it every turn one. Like, this card is so absurd. It's not just the protection, it's the ability to put back my Minervas and stuff like that so that I can either top deck them or I can just resolve another ties and get them out. But also, this allows me to play Divine Punishment, which is broken. Divine Punishment is like Infinity Barrier. So this card is just nuts, you guys. It's so broken. It really is. Like, all your spells get you advantage. And that's the purpose of the spells in this deck. Like, your spells are supposed to get you advantage that leads to traps, or you need to open with the ties. And ties sometimes get you more far than Card of Demise does. And that's really speaking volumes, because drawing 3 is a huge thing, but Ties of the Brethren, when you have the adequate setup for it, it's just so OP. Now, next up for our traps, we're playing 3 Rebirth of Parshath. This counter trap is... You have to open Guiding Ariadne. Like, the cost for this counter trap is just absurd. Like, it's not really... Konami tried too hard to make this balance, put it that way. Like, they really tried way too hard trying to make this a balanced card. Because now it's not only balanced, but it's a little bit too unconservative. Like, you have to commit so much to resolve this if you don't have Ariadne that I literally, like, if I open this and I don't have Ariadne, I will not activate it unless it would, like, I would die if I don't. Like, it's too much of a cost, but the card is nuts. Like, when you resolve it, you get really far ahead, but it's better to have it with Ariadne so that it's just free. So this is like Infinity Barrier, basically. Like, it's just so nuts. And then we play 3 Ultimate Providence. It negates anything, a spell trap or monster, by discarding a card of the same type, but because of your Guiding Ariadne, that's not the case. And because you have Desires and Cards from the Sky and Demise, you have all these cards that say, oh, I draw more than 1 card. You have a very high chance of getting to your Ariadne, which that's when this becomes clutch. But also, like, keep in mind, like, if you're not resolving Demise, you can hold monsters and traps for this. Because, like, for this, you have to hold a counter trap. So for this, you could hold a monster, for example, and you'll still have like 2 to 3 negates even at that, but it's more ideal with Ariadne because this is just free. Like, and this deck, even though it's a back row heavy deck, something interesting about counter fairies is, unlike Altergeist and unlike Paleos and Sky Strikers and other stuff like that, it's a back row deck that does not lose to evenly match. It doesn't lose to Twin Twisters and it doesn't lose to Reboot because its whole main deck has like 9 to 10 outs to evenly, outs to Reboot, outs to Twin Twister. Like, just this deck, like, you have to play into the negates. You have to, like, or for example, like, normal summon Dinkosek or something like that. Like, you can't evenly this deck, and I like that a lot. And these are some of the reasons why. Obviously, Divine Punishment is another reason why this card is just insane. Like, it's a barrier too. You have to have Sanctum, which is basically, you have to have Sanctuary in the Sky, but the Sanctum is Sanctuary in the Sky. It's nuts. Like, this card is so unfair. It's so OP. And putting back, like, your resources, like, this, you grind so hard with this spell. Like, this spell, people pick this up, man. Get the structure deck. Like, it's so broken. But Divine Punishment, negate anything, negate anything, negate anything. And you have 9 of these. And you have a plethora of draw power. Like, you're always going to be opening multiple negates, multiple disruptions. They might not be Vortexes and Jackal Kings, but they're still the equivalent of a negate for end-all, be-all kind of negate. Then we have 3 strikes. Well, these could negate anything. The one thing they can't negate is summons. So, you know, strike is ideal because you're trying to keep your opponent's board clear so that you could keep poking, because if you're not using Parshath and you're not using Minerva, your monsters are pretty small, so they can't necessarily beat over things. So strike really helps you to keep monsters like that from hitting the field in the first place. Then we have 1 warning. It kind of just, it's so flexible. If I had Judgment, I would play Judgment, but I don't have Judgment. I used to have this Ghost Rare Judgment, and I sold it. I sell cards a lot. I have a problem with that. Next up, we have 2 Light of Judgment. Now, Light of Judgment works when you have Sanctuary on the Sky, in the sky on the field too, but it's really broken because what you do is you pitch a fairy, okay, and then you either look at your opponent's hand and then you rip a card out of it, or you just send one card your opponent controls to the grave. So non-targeting, non-destruction removal, or rip a card out of your opponent's hand. Neither one of those are bad effects. But also at the same time, it's not so relevant and just so incredible that like you have to play 3 of it. It's really a niche scenario card. Like it comes up, but you have to be in that position where it's gonna be beneficial to you, and it's gonna basically change the game state. Like this is one of those cards that changes the game state. Like you go from losing to winning, and that's what I mean by change the game state. So like it's ideal in the mid to late game when you're grinding, and you resolve this when you're grinding. Like you're supposed to get ahead. Like if you were behind, this card helps you to keep up. Like you're gonna get ahead off of it. It's so imperative that you play this in your counter fairy list. I like highly recommend it. It's so good. If it were a counter trap, it would be godly. And then next up, I played Floodgates over more counter traps that I could have played. I felt that the 13 counter traps was more than enough, especially with all the, goodness gracious, all the drop power that I have. Like it's enough. But the rivalry and goes in are because like this deck really struggles going second. And for this list, I'm not playing infinite impermanence. I decided that these would take the place of impermanence because like I'm playing a dedicated go first build, and for this deck you want to side deck 15 going second cards because the deck's already so good at going first, and like it's really difficult to pinpoint when and where to stop this deck. But I feel like Gozen is superior to Rivalry for the simple fact that Gozen beats Altergeist, and it beats Sky Strikers, and it beats Thunder Dragons, whereas with Rivalry, like, it doesn't beat Thunder Dragons, it doesn't beat Altergeist, and then if Sky Strikers have one of their links, they can just go Kagari into Hayate, into Shizuku all they want. But under Gozen, they can't. But at the same time, the Dark Warrior deck, it'll summon the Phantom Knight link, that's a dark. It'll summon Rongo, that's a dark. And then it'll summon the Danger monsters, those are darks. And it'll summon Armageddon Knight and Malicious, those are darks. But if you put them under Rivalry, sure, they might be able to summon certain things, but they can't summon the Dangers, they can't summon Levier the Sea Dragon, and they can't commit to Gumblar because Gumblar's a dragon. But like under Gozen, like they could pretty much do the hand loop. Like it's really strong. Well, like they can't get. I don't think they can Connector because Connector's not dark. But I just feel that Rivalry hurts that deck more than Gozen, and because like you have this back and forth contusive thing like that just really grinds my gears. I was just like, you know what, 2 of each instead of 3 of one and none of the other. The main deck should be 45. I normally shoot for 45 with decks like these. That's a good number, especially because like you have a lot of deck thinning, and then you're playing Desires. Like I just really like the number. 45 is really good for me. So for the extra deck, this might throw you off, but I'm playing Triple Service. Now I played Triple Service because this deck's biggest problem is dealing with big monsters. Like you can negate all you want, but this deck lacks in firepower immensely. And because it lacks in firepower, and because also it doesn't spam the board like most decks, so you can't go into like a bunch of links and like go into a huge link foreplay. Like a Borlo Dragon is so hard to do in this deck, it's nearly impossible. But Service is easy to access, and it only requires 2 of the 3 that you got off of your ties. And sometimes you only open 1 and no ties, but then you normal summon another one on the follow-up, and you just make Service. And you use Service so much in this list, like, trust me, it comes up a lot more for me than you would think, but it might be a different experience for you. But like Service fixes so many problems for me. Like there's so many monsters I just cannot attack over. I have to Service them. Like he's just so good in this deck. Like he's nuts. 1 copy of Phoenix. You don't really need Phoenix all the time, but you gotta pop the multi-roll. 1 Binary Sorceress. I need to gain more life points. I need to shrink the attack of other monsters and make my stuff bigger because my monsters are little. And then we have 1 Underclock Taker because my monsters are little. And then Hippo Shinigen because my monsters are little. And Akashic Magician, which actually is always going to be able to be made because all your guys are fairies, you know, and not to mention they're all light too, which Rivalry and goes in, you could play under those and it won't affect you. But Akashic is really nice, you guys. Like, people don't play around Akashic no more, so they summon in the even columns. The even number columns, and Akashic just punishes them. Like, especially if it's like a monster that can't be destroyed. And then we have Decode and Griffin. These are for when, like, you do have the resources. This should be Summon Sword, but I just got rid of my Summon Sword because she got reprinted. And I sold the Ultra so that I'm going to pick up the super rare reprint. So, like, you know, I could get a little profit on that. But it's supposed to be Griffin Summon Sword. And the reason why I decided to keep the Griffin is because every time I Summon Sword, I can Griffin after that. And there's nothing wrong with Griffin because a lot of the times, unless it's Ties of the Brethren, all your monsters are normal summon monsters. Normal summon monsters can activate their effect even if they're not linked because Griffin doesn't apply to normals. So, like, yeah, Summon Sword combo into the Griffin is really nice. Especially setting, and the most important thing is setting another counter trap from your grave to your field. Fairy Cheer Girl, you grind so much with this card. Like, whew, bruh. You plus off of your Minerva, you plus off of your Sage, you plus off of your Artemis. Then you overlay Minerva and Sage into that, and then you draw one, and then you keep drawing off of your Artemis. Like, it's so good. Castell. Exciton Knight is, like, broken. But the thing is, this deck commits a lot, and most of the time, you're more prone to be Exciton than your opponent is. But you still play it because this card rewards you for losing. And if you're ever losing, like if your opponent played through all your counter traps and then they still got super far ahead of you, which kind of sucks, Exciton Knight, man. And then Baguska, because Baguska plus all those counter traps is just too much for even the best decks to handle. Like, it's so broken. Like, Baguska slept on. Like, you don't see him being played in the competitive format, but I think he's really good against, like, Trick Stars. He's really, really broken against Altergeist. He's really good against Thunder Dragons. And I think that he's really dope against the Dark Warrior deck. Because, like, even though they can go into a Soul Day, when they summon their Leviaires and their Gossip Souls and, you know, anything like that, including Armageddon Knights, like, they won't get their effects and they go straight to D. So I think Baguska's just too broken, you guys. Like, it's just so good. You have to play it. And yeah, the extra deck still needs work. Like, I need Borosword and Borlog, but even if I had them, you don't really make them as often as you think you would think you would. Because, like, you need a Ties of the Brethren for 3, and then normal for turn, and then give up all of those powerful monsters that give you more value just by staying on the field for a Borlog, which really sucks. So, like, you would think extra that comes up. Oftentimes, I just service, pop something, and keep it pushing. So that's why I play 3 service. But yep, that's my list, you guys. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Compare this to my other counter fairy build that I have up on my channel, and you tell me which one you feel is superior. Thank you guys so much. God bless you. Have a beautiful day, all right? And stay positive. Peace. I'm going to come around on the other side on my camera.